Have you ever stood at the edge of yourself and wondered if anyone would notice if you simply disappeared? Not in the dramatic way, just quietly, like smoke dissolving into smoke. That's how Arthur felt most mornings when he woke up in his basement room in Whitechapel, East London, in the winter of 1891. Let me take you there. Close your eyes for a moment and breathe in. Can you smell it? Coal smoke, thick and bitter, mixing with the scent of rotting vegetables from the market 3 streets over. The air here doesn't move. It hangs like a wet blanket over everything. Open your eyes now, but don't expect much light. The fog in the East End isn't like the fog you might know. This fog has weight. It presses against the windows. It seeps through the cracks in the walls. It swallows sounds before they can travel more than a few feet. Arthur's room isn't really a room at all. It's a basement, what they called a cellar dwelling back then. To get there, you walk down 3 stone steps from the street level. Each step is cracked, worn smooth by decades of boots, most of them belonging to people who had nowhere else to go. The door is wooden, swollen from dampness, and it scrapes against the floor when you push it open. Inside, the ceiling is so low that a tall man would have to stoop. The walls are brick, but you can't see the brick anymore because they're covered in a film of soot and moisture. In one corner, there's a narrow bed, just a wooden frame with a thin mattress stuffed with straw. In another corner, a small cast iron stove, cold most days, because coal costs money Arthur doesn't have. And in the center of the room, illuminated by a single candle, there is a potter's wheel. Now, I need you to understand something about Arthur. On paper, his life is a tragedy. His father died in a factory accident when Arthur was 12. His mother followed 3 years later from tuberculosis. He has no formal education beyond basic reading and writing taught by a charity school. He works when he can find work loading cargo at the docks, 14 hours a day for wages that barely cover bread and rent. His hands are scarred. His back aches constantly. By every measure society uses to judge a man's worth, Arthur has none. But here's what the street above him doesn't know. Here's what the landlord who collects his rent every week doesn't see. Here's what even Arthur himself didn't understand for the longest time. In this dark, damp room, he has found something that kings search for their entire lives and never find. He has found flow. Let me explain what happens when Arthur sits down at his wheel. It's evening now. He's just come back from the docks. His shoulders are screaming. His hands are shaking from exhaustion. There's a knot of anxiety in his chest because he knows that next week, the foreman might not call his name, might give his spot to someone younger, stronger. The rent is due in 5 days. He has enough money for 4. These thoughts are like rats scurrying around in his head, biting, scratching, never letting him rest. But then he lights the candle, just one, because candles cost money too. The flame catches, flickers, steadies. He sits down on the wooden stool in front of the wheel. The stool is old, made by his father's hands years ago. It's one of the only things he has left from before. He places his foot on the pedal. He reaches for the lump of clay sitting on the shelf. Clay he dug himself from the riverbank 2 days ago when the tide was low. The clay is cold, dense, gray, lifeless. He lifts it, feels its weight in his palms, and centers it on the wheel. Then he begins to push the pedal with his foot. Slowly at first, the wheel starts to turn. Whir, whir, whir. It's a rhythm, like a heartbeat, like a breathing. His foot finds the tempo without thinking. His body remembers. Now, watch his hands. Watch carefully. He dips his fingers in a small bowl of water and lets a few drops fall onto the clay. The water spreads across the surface, turning the gray into something darker, softer. He presses his palms against the clay as it spins. At first, it wobbles. It resists. But Arthur doesn't force it. He waits. He applies steady, gentle pressure. And slowly, so slowly you might not even notice it happening, the clay begins to respond. It centers. It surrenders. And this is the moment everything changes. The rats in his head, gone. The anxiety about rent disappeared. The ache in his shoulders, still there but distant now, like a memory of pain rather than pain itself. His breathing has slowed down without him trying to slow it down. His mind has stopped jumping from worry to worry and has settled into a single point of focus, the clay beneath his hands. Neuroscientists today would tell you that Arthur's brain is flooded with dopamine right now. Not the cheap, quick dopamine you get from a gamble or a drink, but the deep, sustained dopamine that comes from meaningful creation.
His prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-criticism and anxiety, has gone quiet. His default mode network, the mental chatter that usually runs non-stop, has switched off.
What's left is pure presence, pure focus.
This is what psychologists call flow state. Though Arthur would never use those words, he would just say, "It feels like coming home."
His thumbs press into the center of the spinning clay. He's making a bowl tonight, or maybe a vase. He hasn't decided yet. The clay will tell him. That's something he learned over the years. You don't impose your will on the clay. You listen to it, you feel what it wants to become. He applies pressure, and the clay begins to open up. A small indentation forms in the center. He widens it carefully, patiently. Too fast, and the walls will collapse. Too slow, and the clay will dry and crack. It requires perfect balance, perfect timing, perfect attention. There's a philosophy here that Arthur has never read in books but has learned through his hands. The Japanese call it shibui, the beauty of imperfection of things that are understated and unforced. The Chinese have a similar concept in wu wei, action through non-action, effortless effort. Arthur doesn't know these words, but he knows the feeling. When he tries too hard, when he grips too tight, when he wants too much, the clay resists. But when he relaxes, when he trusts, when he lets his hands move with the wheel instead of against it, magic happens. The walls of the bowl are rising now. Thin, elegant, even. He can feel the clay responding to his touch, almost eager now, almost alive. His fingers glide along the inside, while his other hand supports the outside. The wheel continues its steady rhythm. Whir, whir, whir. Time has stopped meaning anything. He might have been sitting here for 10 minutes or 2 hours. He genuinely doesn't know, and he doesn't care. There's a quote from Rumi, the Persian poet, though Arthur has never heard of Rumi. Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. This is what's happening right now. Arthur is being pulled, not by duty, not by survival, not by fear, but by love. Love of the clay. Love of the process. Love of the transformation happening between his fingers. Above him, on the street level, London continues its chaos. Carriages rattle past. Street vendors shout. Children cry. Drunks stumble home from pubs. Policemen blow their whistles. Somewhere, a woman is singing a sad song. Somewhere else, 2 men are fighting. The city is a machine that never stops grinding, never stops demanding, never stops taking. But down here, 3 steps below the street, in this small circle of candlelight, there is peace. I want you to understand something important about what Arthur is doing. This isn't escapism. He's not running away from his life. If anything, he's running toward the only part of his life that feels real. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once wrote, "The most common form of despair is not being who you are." Arthur spent years being who the world told him he was, worthless, disposable, invisible. But here, at this wheel, he is who he actually is, a creator, an artist, a man capable of turning nothing into something. The bowl is nearly finished now. He uses a thin wooden tool to refine the rim, making it perfectly smooth. Then, with a piece of wire, he cuts the bowl free from the wheel. It sits there, complete, beautiful, in its simplicity. It will need to dry for several days, then be fired in a kiln. Arthur has an arrangement with a pottery workshop across town. He does odd jobs for them in exchange for kiln time. This bowl might become a gift for Mrs. Chen, the old Chinese woman who runs the noodle shop and sometimes gives Arthur leftover broth when he's too broke to eat. Or it might sit on his shelf, one of dozens he's made, each one a small victory against the darkness. He sits back. His hands are covered in clay. His shirt has a new stain. The candle has burned down halfway. And for the first time today, Arthur smiles. Not because anything in his circumstances has changed. He's still poor, still alone, still uncertain about next week, but because for the last hour, he wasn't those things. He was simply himself, fully present, fully alive. There's a lesson here that extends far beyond pottery, far beyond the East End of London in 1891, far beyond Arthur himself. It's about what happens when you find your wheel, that one thing that makes the noise stop, that lets you breathe, that reminds you who you are beneath all the labels the world has stuck on you. Your wheel might not be pottery. It might be painting, writing, cooking, gardening, coding, running, playing music, solving equations, building furniture with your hands. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is that you have something, one thing where time disappears, where your anxious mind goes quiet, where you're not performing for anyone or proving anything to anyone, where you are simply creating for the sake of creation. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, who had all the power and wealth Arthur could never dream of, wrote in his private journal, "Confine yourself to the present." He understood what Arthur understands, that the past is unchangeable and the future is unknowable. But this moment, this single, precious moment is where life actually happens. And if you can find a way to be fully present in this moment, even if everything around you is falling apart, you have found something more valuable than gold. Arthur doesn't know that 2 centuries from now, people will still struggle with the same feelings he struggles with. That they'll live in cities with electric lights and machines that fit in their pockets, but they'll still feel lost, still feel overwhelmed, still feel like the world is too loud and they're too small. He doesn't know that the solution he's found, deep focus, meaningful work, the flow state, will be studied by scientists and taught by psychologists and sought after by millions. All he knows is that when he sits at this wheel, he is free. And freedom, real freedom, has nothing to do with money or status or what the world thinks of you. Freedom is the space between you and your thoughts. Freedom is the ability to choose where you place your attention. Freedom is remembering that you are not your circumstances, you are what you create in spite of them. The candle flickers. Arthur washes his hands in a bucket of water, dries them on his shirt, and stands up. His body aches again now that he's left the flow state. The reality of his situation comes rushing back, but it's different now, softer, more bearable. Because he knows that tomorrow evening, he'll come back down these 3 steps, light another candle, and sit at his wheel again. And as long as he can do that, as long as he can create beauty in the darkness, he will survive. There's an old Japanese proverb, "Fall 7 times, stand up 8. Arthur has fallen more times than he can count, but he keeps standing up. Not because he's optimistic or naive or doesn't understand how hard life is. He stands up because he's found his reason to stand. He's found his will. So I'll ask you again. Have you found yours in this moment right now? What is the one thing that makes you feel like Arthur feels? What is the activity, the practice, the art that turns the volume down on everything else? If you have it, protect it fiercely. Make time for it even when you don't have time. Choose it even when the world demands something else from you. Because that thing, whatever it is not a luxury. It's not a hobby. It's not something you do when all the important stuff is finished. It is the important stuff. It's the thing that keeps you human when the world tries to turn you into a machine. And if you haven't found it yet, start looking. Try things. Fail at things. Be willing to be a beginner. to be awkward, to be bad at something before you get good. Because somewhere out there is your wheel, your clay, your candle in the darkness. And when you find it, everything changes. Not your circumstances necessarily, but you. And sometimes that's enough. The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams, yes. But more than that, the present belongs to those who have the courage to create beauty in the darkness, one moment at a time. Keep flowing, keep growing. And remember Arthur, down in his basement, hands covered in clay, smile on his face, free in the only way that matters. This is your reminder. This is your permission. This is your call to find what makes you whole and to never let it go.